Let's take an early look at a Cessna Citation crash that occurred Thursday, May 22nd at 3:47 a.m. in San Diego. The aircraft was on an instrument flight from Wichita, Kansas to Montgomery-Gibbs Field and crashed apparently after hitting power lines and crashing into a neighborhood. What we know is that 6 fatalities on the aircraft have been confirmed, and we do not know at this time if there were fatalities or injuries on the ground. We'll take a look at the pilot, the aircraft, and the weather, and then some areas the NTSB may look at. We know that the pilot owned this aircraft. It was November 666 Delta Sierra. It was a Citation 550 S2 built in 1985. The pilot, as the owner-operator, had a third-class medical and was a well-qualified pilot, had an ATP, multi-engine land, single-engine C, a CFII, and was a commercial helicopter pilot. He also held citation type ratings for the S500 series, which includes the S550 and the 525S CJ series. We also believe that this pilot, owner-operator, was qualified to fly this Citation S2 as a single pilot. The flight had originated in Teterboro, New Jersey at 11 p.m. the night before, stopped what we believe is for gas in Wichita, Kansas, and then continued the flight into Montgomery-Gibbs. Montgomery-Gibbs underlies the San Diego Class B airspace. It's in a very densely populated area, and it has 2 parallel runways, 28 right and 28 left. This pilot was making an GPS approach to runway 28 right. The METARs in the area point to a low overcast marine layer, which is typical of San Diego at night this time of year. At Montgomery-Gibbs, the destination, the METARs were out of service. However, just to the north at Miramar Marine Corps Air Station, the METAR was for 0 knots of wind, 200 feet overcast, and 1/2 mile visibility. Same exact weather was in the METAR at Gillespie Field, just to the east of Montgomery-Gibbs, and just to the south at San Diego Lindbergh International, the weather was better, 1,000-foot overcast, 9 miles of visibility with winds 170 at 3. The entire area was dominated by ceiling and visibilities that were low, consistent with a marine layer in Southern California, as this map can tell you. The accident occurred just on the eastern edge of this Aviation Weather Center chart. The Prague chart shows that the weather was dominated by a low pressure system, and fog was consistent throughout the Southern California area. We took a close look at the ADSB Exchange track data to try to find out why this airplane, what the flight path was of this aircraft as it was approaching runway 28 right at Montgomery-Gibbs. SoCal approach had vectored the airplane to Nesty intersection inside the initial approach fix for the GPS runway 28 right approach. And at Nesty, the published altitude was 3,600 feet or above, and ADSB Exchange showed us the aircraft was at 3,800 feet, which was the assigned altitude. The aircraft turns right to intercept a 281 degree heading inbound to Montgomery-Gibbs, and by everything we can see, he flew a rails approach. The course never deviated off of the center line for the approach. At Penny, the final approach fix, the published altitude is 2,500 feet, and the aircraft was at 2,500 feet. We then see that inside Penny, as the aircraft approaches the last GPS fix of Palos, the published altitude for that last fix is 1,380 feet MSL, and the ADSB Exchange shows that the aircraft had descended to 1,200 feet, so 180 feet below the glide path. The aircraft continued below the glide path until it struck power lines at about 1.5 miles from the approach end of runway 28 right. This obstruction is charted on the instrument approach plate at 554 feet. And the aircraft's altitude at the time of the impact was 500 feet, obviously well below the obstruction. ADSB Exchange data shows that the aircraft climbed about 100 feet after this impact and then collided into the neighborhood. We don't know why this aircraft went below glide path, but we do know that it appeared to be a stabilized approach. The course was right on the whole way down. Airspeed control was about 120, 125 knots, maybe a little fast, but certainly not out of the ordinary. And something caused the airplane to go below the glide slope. We believe this will be the intense focus for the NTSB investigation. ATC audio was examined and nothing abnormal jumped out at us. The aircraft was given the weather at the surrounding airports because Montgomery-Gibbs weather was not reporting. It was cleared for the RNAV 28 right approach, and it was given a frequency change to tower. The NTSB, we believe, will focus on several areas. What caused the aircraft to descend below the glide path? Why didn't the pilot select a suitable alternate? We know that this approach takes the aircraft down to 250 feet, and the weather was observed at 200 feet overcast. Pilot fatigue. The NTSB will examine the pilot's history and find out all the events that the pilot participated in leading up to the departure out of Teterboro at 11 o'clock that night. The NTSB will also examine maintenance records to find out if there were documented inaccuracies in some of the equipment, altimeter specifically, and they'll also look at whether or not the aircraft was given an accurate altimeter setting as they were descending and talking to SoCal approach. We do know the aircraft did this flight from Wichita to San Diego at 40,000 feet, so they would have had 2992 set in the altimeter. Even if they had not been given a new altimeter setting, we know that the altimeter setting at the destination airport was either 2989 or 2990, which is what the altimeter settings were in the area. So even if the pilot didn't change the altimeter setting, it would have caused his altitude to be off by about 30 feet, probably not enough to affect the outcome that happened. The NTSB will take the next 18 to 24 months to thoroughly investigate this accident, and they will publish their probable cause determinations. But it's important for pilots to take some lessons away from these early analysis videos that can be valuable now instead of waiting for 2 years to get that. So we analyzed the things that pilots can learn, and we think several items jump out at us. First is the effects of fatigue on aeronautical decision making. We won't know until the NTSB completes its investigation if this pilot was rested before he took off at 11 p.m. or perhaps he was at the end of a long, socially demanding day. In any case, a night flight from 11 p.m. to 3:40 in the morning in San Diego, cross-country flight, is a fatiguing effort, especially when you're flying into low IMC conditions after the end of a long flight. Maybe there were some decisions made that affected the outcome of this flight. Another thing to consider as GA pilots is our fuel planning. This Citation was capable of carrying 5,800 pounds of fuel, more than enough to make a two-leg flight across the country. Citation instructors we spoke with said that they likely would have topped off at Wichita. We won't know that until the NTSB finishes its investigation. But if the pilot chose to not top off in Wichita, that could have impacted the options that were available to that pilot for alternate planning in the destination. Destination weather, like I said, in San Diego was 1,000 feet over and 9 miles visibility. So just to the south of Montgomery-Gibbs, there seemed to be a suitable alternate. We do not know why the pilot didn't choose to land at San Diego Lindbergh. What we do know is there's a curfew in place for takeoffs, but that curfew does not impact or affect approaches at night. And another one is get there-itis or get home-itis. Pilots are familiar with that term. Sometimes we all are experiencing it from time to time. But this could be a case where this pilot and his passengers were really anxious to get home after a night in Teterboro. And all we can say is that if you experience get home-itis as a pressure to continue a flight, please resist that. We have too many examples that we've published of accidents that have happened precisely because of the strong urge to get home and the decisions made that shouldn't have been made, whether it's flying into bad weather or continuing a long flight when you're tired. And finally, I'll review the I am safe acronym. The F in this is for fatigue. That may have been an issue. If had the pilot considered the I am safe moniker, he may have made a different decision either in Teterboro or in Wichita. It's also important to review the 5 hazardous attitudes and the antidotes to prevent those. The first is resignation. The antidote is, I'm not helpless. I don't think that might have been an issue here. 1 is anti-authority. The antidote is to follow the rules. We do think that invulnerability and macho, 2 of the 5 hazardous attitudes, may have come to bear here based on all the facts we looked at this early time in the investigation. The antidote to invulnerability is to believe, yes, it can happen to you. And the antidote to macho is to know that taking chances is foolish. The NTSB will publish its results in the end, and more will be learned in the next coming days and weeks as the NTSB publishes its preliminary report. Thank you very much.